All right, so we're starting out by drawing a series of lines, and they're going to vary a little bit in width, and I'm not measuring these, I'm just freehand drawing them, but these are going to be indications of where the value is going to change. So we are going to be trying to get a gradient here, but it's a gradient that follows the same kind of rules as if you were going to do a cylinder or even a cone. So it's going to be a shift in value, and this is something that is really critical if you're trying to make an object appear 3D. I'm placing a number on these. You should have 6 vertical bars, and the numbers are going to relate to the values. The lighter values are going to be the numbers like 1, 2, and 3, and the darker values go all the way to 6. So it's just kind of to help you realize where the shifts are going to occur. Now you do have to blend those values in. That's why I drew that arrow and the 2. Really, you're blending those values in so it's a smooth, imperceptible shift almost from one value to another. I'm just showing you, I'm mixing on my palette here, mixing some violets, and I'm not using any black on this, although you could. When you add black, it kind of flattens the color. So I'm just using white and red and that phthalo blue, that darker blue. And I'm mixing up ahead of time 6 values that I think will work. All right, so now going back to our sheet of paper, we're going to be working on painting it in. So I work from dark to light, so I'm starting off with the darkest value being 6. So I'm taking that dark paint and I'm putting a little spot. And now I'm going to the lightest value and I'm putting a little spot for the lightest value. And I am switching brushes here when I do it, so I have a clean brush. And I'm just going to put a little indicator, a little sample of each of those colors that I want it ultimately to shift to. And it might change as I go. So this gradient is going to be a purple gradient. Okay, so I want you to try painting this using a slight curve to your brush. So it's like a little bit of a smile curve to your brush stroke. And you're kind of flicking the paint on there. And you're working on filling up that vertical column. All right, so now I'm going to try and transition that over to that 5 column. So I'm taking that same color on my brush, added a little bit of light to it. So with a tiny, very tiny speck of white to that to try and get it to shift and be a smooth shift. I'm just pushing that a little bit into the dark column so that it can be a transition that's a smooth transition. The thing about the gradient is you have to be prepared to paint it multiple times and to try and achieve that effect of it just seamlessly fading from one value to the next. I'm going to the other side there too with a little bit of that same color, so a little bit lighter than the dark side or that dark stripe. And that dark stripe ultimately is the form shadow. And the form shadow is going to move on the left into a reflected light, to the right into midtone. Okay, so now we're going to work on the number 4. So trying to get it to go a little bit lighter. You don't want to go too light because reflected light is never as light as your midtones. It's always going to be a little bit darker. So you want to just have that fade in. So the goal of this exercise is to try and get that kind of replication of a cylinder, like a slice of a cylinder. You want a cylinder to be able to turn. To turn means to make it look 3D. So that's the goal. You're going to try and practice that technique of blending, of fading, and getting a gradient. So all these areas that I painted just now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to paint again, try and smooth that shift, try and make it the smoothest shift in value that I can come up with. So now it's started to transition even lighter. So most cylinders do that. They have some reflected light, they have a form shadow, they have the mid-tone, which is what this is turning into. And where that one is, that's the highlight. And then they turn and go back a little bit darker. So in a little bit, you're going to be working on this too. You're going to be trying to go all through the range of those values from kind of a reflected light on the left to the darker value, mid-tone, highlight, back to a lighter shade. Not quite as light as a highlight. So you do want to avoid those stripes. You can see those stripes clearly right now. And to do that, you have to layer and you have to bridge in between them. So you have to, in order to do a bridge is when you have a value that kind of bridges the two values together, and then you have like more of a seamless flow. You have to mix those two values, the lighter shade and the darker shade, together to get a bridge. And that's what I'm working on right now, but I worked a lot off camera. I'm going to show you the finished piece, so you don't have to watch me paint nonstop, but I'm just going to show you like the finished exercise. All right, there it is.